piss poor ranger in my view, he said. My grandfather and his father were both violent men. Their eyes were possessed of a peculiar unfocused light that soldiers call the 1,000-yard stare, and the ghosts of the men they had killed visited them in their sleep and stood in attendance by their deathbeds. When I was a young police officer in Houston, I swore their legacy would never be mine. But if there are drunkards in your family, the chances are you will drink from the same cup as they. The war that can flare in your breast with each dawn doesn't always have to come from a charcoal-lined barrel. I lived alone in a 3-story late Victorian house built of purple brick, 20 miles from the little town of Deaf Smith, the county seat. The house had a 2nd-story veranda and a wide screened-in gallery, the woodwork painted a gleaming white. The front and backyards were enclosed by poplar trees and myrtle bushes, and the flower beds planted with red and yellow roses. I made sun tea in big jars on the gallery, grilled steaks for friends under the chinaberry tree in the backyard, and sometimes cane fished with a bunch of Mexican children in the 2-acre tank, or lake, at the back of my farm. But at night, my footsteps rang off the oak and mahogany woodwork inside my house like stones dropped down an empty well. The ghosts of my ancestors did not visit me. The ghost of another man did. His name was L.Q. Navarro. In life, he was the most handsome man I ever knew, with jet-black hair and wide shoulders and skin as brown and smooth as newly dyed leather. When he appeared to me, he wore the clothes he had died in, a dark pinstriped suit and dusty boots, a floppy gray Stetson, a white shirt that glowed like electrified snow. His hand-tooled gun belt and holstered revolver hung on his thigh like a silly afterthought. Through the top buttonhole of his shirt, he had inserted the stem of a scarlet rose. Sometimes he disappeared into sunlight, his form breaking into millions of golden particles. At other times I did pro bono work on hopeless defenses, and my spectral visitor declared a temporary amnesty and waited patiently each night by himself among the mesquite trees and blackjack oaks on a distant hillside. The phone rang at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning in April. "They got my boy in the jailhouse. I want him out," the voice said. "Is that you, Vernon?" "No, it's the nigger in the wood pile." Vernon Smothers, the worst business mistake in my life. He farmed 70 acres of my land on shares, and I had reached a point where I was almost willing to pay him not to come to work. "What's he charged with?" I asked. I could hear Vernon chewing on something, a piece of hard candy perhaps. I could almost see the knotted thoughts in his eyes as he looked for the trap he always found in other people's words. "Vernon?" "He was drunk again down by the river." "Call a bondsman." "They made up some lies. They're saying he raped a girl down there." "Where's the girl?" "At the hospital. She ain't conscious, so she can't say who done it. That means they ain't got no case, ain't that right?" "I want a promise from you. If I get him out, don't you dare put your hand on him." "How about you just mind your own goddamn business then?" he said, and hung up. The county courthouse was built of sandstone, surrounded by a high-banked green lawn and live oak trees whose tops touched the 3rd story. The jailer was named Harley Sweet, and his mouth always hung partly open while you spoke, as though he were patiently trying to understand your train of thought. But he was not an understanding man. When he was a deputy sheriff, many black and Mexican men in his custody never reached the jail, nor thereafter did they stay on the same sidewalk as he when they